In this episode, we take a look at a talk I recently gave on why motivation is just not enough. Get excited because this is Tiny Leaps, Big Change. Welcome to another episode of Tiny Leaps, Big Changes, where I share simple strategies you can use to get more out of your life. My name is Gregg Clunis, and in this episode, I want to break down or just rather share a talk I recently gave. So I was invited to speak at a scholarship ceremony up in my hometown for recent high school graduates who are continuing college, who are children of immigrants or immigrants themselves. And the reason I got this opportunity was because I published my book, and somebody who was in charge at that organization or who works with that organization found it at the local library, and they happened to know my dad, which was a really interesting turn of events. They met him early in his time here when he first came up, honestly, before me and my family even came up. And they contacted me and just said, hey, would you be willing to come to this event for children of immigrants and just share your story, share your experience so far, and hopefully motivate them? And I came into it with this idea that motivation is good, but they're plenty motivated. I've never met an immigrant to this country who is not motivated. It just takes so much to deal with the struggles of everyday life that, like, you kind of have to be motivated, right? So I wanted to go in and present a unique idea that motivation actually wasn't enough. And in the talk, I reveal what I think you should be pursuing instead. So with that said, I'm going to roll the clip, and then we will be back to sort of wrap up afterwards. Let's do it. Can you guys hear me okay? Everybody? Awesome. So I was asked to come here and quote unquote motivate you. And quite frankly, I don't think you need motivation because you're here. And just show of hands, who here believes that they work hard? Just raise your hand if you think you work hard to get to this point. Who here believes that they've struggled a little bit in life and worked through that struggle to get to this point? Who here believes that things weren't always easy? Like they weren't always easy, but you still woke up and did what you had to do? Raise your hands. Exactly. You are plenty motivated. You don't need me standing up here trying to motivate you because you worked hard because you are motivated. And so what I want to do instead of motivate you is talk about something that is more important than motivation. Because the truth is, as I'm sure many of you know, motivation is very fickle. Like, how many times have you woken up in the morning and you just don't feel like it? Like, you just don't want to deal with it anymore. It happens because motivation is fickle. So why do you still do it? It's not because of motivation, it's because you have a reason to. It's because you have a why, and that's much more important than motivation. So what I want to talk to you about today is not how can you be motivated. It's not how can you set your goals and pursue the things you want to do. It's more so, what is your reason for doing what you want to do? And if you don't have it, you need to find it immediately, because that will carry you much further than motivation ever will. So for those of you who don't know who I am, when I was 8, going on 8, my family and I packed up everything we owned, sold everything we couldn't pack, and moved from Jamaica to the United States. And as Kenny mentioned, my dad's first job here, before I even got here, was working on an apple farm. And it's one of those things where I remember visiting the trailer that he used to live in before we got here and asking him about it. And he was telling me it had no heat. He was telling me that the windows were often broken, the water often didn't work. Like, he was putting himself through a major struggle in order to establish himself here and give us the opportunity to come from Jamaica and live with him. And what that created in me growing up was this desire to pay him back. Because after we moved from Jamaica, it's not like things were just smooth sailing. Like my mom, my dad, they worked. I remember being in middle school and there were days where I don't remember seeing either of them because my mom was working double shifts. She was getting home at 11 p.m., 12 p.m. My dad was working overnights. By the time he got home, I was heading out to school. And so there were days in a row that I did not see them. And there was always just in the back of my head this realization that I was blessed because I had these parents that were willing to work hard so that I could have an opportunity. And in the back of my head, that created this drive to pay them back, to make sure they knew that the hard work was worth it, to make sure they knew that no matter what, I was going to be successful so that it didn't go to waste. And that's been the driver for my life for, frankly, as long as I can remember. I remember being early high school and deciding I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Why did I pick entrepreneur? Well, because entrepreneurs can make a lot of money. And I wanted to make a lot of money so that I could retire them, so that they could experience the part of life that they sacrificed in order for me to have the opportunity to experience life. And that was my reason. And when I went to college, that was my reason. I spent hours in my room alone, learning skills, meeting people, talking to investors, learning how business worked, learning how to sell, learning how to design, building businesses and failing, and building businesses and failing, and building businesses and failing over and over and over again, with the sole goal being, how can I make sure I am successful so that I can pay them back? That was it. And there's a big problem when you make that your entire reason for doing everything. Because something I didn't realize until about a year and a half ago, maybe a little closer to 2 years, is that when you build your reason around somebody else and what you want to do for them, there's no guarantee that they're going to be there to receive it. There's no guarantee that they're even going to want you to give it to them. My dad was a stubborn man, and I know for a fact that no matter how much money I made in my life, he was never going to take a dollar of it, regardless of how much I tried to shove it at him. He was never going to be willing to accept it because he didn't work hard so that I could pay him back. He worked hard because he had a reason. And so I built my entire life around this goal of paying my parents back, showing them it was worth it. And then about 3.5 years ago, I had an idea. And I launched this small podcast from my living room. The goal being, how can I take the lessons that my parents taught me about working hard, about showing up, about focusing on the smallest thing you can focus on, about taking the opportunity in front of you. How can I take these lessons that I was uniquely positioned to learn, thanks to being an immigrant, thanks to the work that they had to do, and thanks to the lack of privilege that we came from? How could I take those lessons and present it to other people around the world? And so I launched this podcast called Tiny Leaps, Big Changes, with that being the sole purpose. And before I knew it, something worked. I'd tried 6, 7, 8 other ideas, and none of it worked. I was slamming my head against a wall, and then finally, one thing worked, this podcast. Within 6 months, it had been listened to 1 million times. To date, 3.5 years later, it's been listened to over 6 million times in most of the countries in the world. It turned into the book that Kenny found in the library. That book is available in Barnes & Noble and every store that sells books around this country and in other countries. And finally, this thing worked. And I'm really happy that I got the book deal in June of 2017, because in October of 2017, before I had finished writing the book, before the book had published, before I could fulfill this dream of piling my family into a car, driving them to Barnes & Noble and pointing at my book on the shelves, my father passed away. And so this dream of showing them it was worth it could never happen. And in that moment, yes, I was feeling grief. Yes, I missed him. Yes, I was crying because I was sad. But there was also this shock to my system when I realized I had built my entire life and made every decision around paying them back, and there was no guarantee they were going to be there to receive it. And that killed my reason. Before I knew it, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't work. I couldn't deal with my clients. I let go of everyone that was working with me. I could not function because I did not have a reason anymore. Motivation was long gone. The reason was all I had, and then that went away too. And then eventually I worked through that thanks to the people around me, the people that support me, my family, my girlfriend, my friends. They all got me to a place where I was able to start searching for a new reason. And I learned something from this, that one, motivation is not enough. Motivation will not be there tomorrow. Motivation will not be there a month from now. When you get punched in the face because life just says, hey, surprise, motivation's not going to be there for you. You're not going to want to crawl out of bed. The only thing that gets you out is a reason. Number two, the reason cannot be built around someone else. It has to be for you. It has to be selfish, and it has to be built around something you want to do for yourself or for the world. But it cannot be because you feel like you owe somebody. It cannot be because you want to make your family proud of you. It cannot be anything other than something you truly want. And then number three, once you've found that reason, it'll take you as far as you want to go. No matter what that ambition looks like for you, you can get there as long as the reason is strong enough and you're willing to do the work for it. So over the last 3.5 years, I've been blessed to accomplish pretty much every goal that I'd had since I was a child, except for the one goal that was my biggest reason. However, that pain taught me that my reason needed to be that I wanted to help others. I wanted to impact the world. I wanted to do the things I was doing. And by making that one small change in my reason, things picked up much faster than they ever have before. So what I want to leave you with as the parents go back home and continue their lives, as the students go on to college and look towards the next 2 to 4 years of their life, is spend the rest of your time finding a reason that is unique to you and that is for you. And if you can do that, whatever goals or dreams or things you've wanted to accomplish with your life become infinitely more possible. Thank you.
There you have it. Motivation is not enough. You must first find your why. This was such an interesting talk for me because, one, the circumstances around it, like, it's very close to home. I'm an immigrant myself. I grew up here. My dad was a migrant worker, and he just really worked his tail off. He and my mom just worked their butts off to give me opportunity. And so here I am at this scholarship event, speaking to other people that are just graduating high school. They're choosing to take and pursue the opportunity that their parents created for them. So it's super, super humbling to be a part of it. But I think the other reason it was so important to me was because this is the first time that I've really solidified this idea that motivation is not enough, that you need to pursue a reason, you need to pursue a why, because motivation will fail you when you need it the most. But your reason, the why, that is what is so important. And many of you are fans of Simon Sinek, Start With Why. And I also talk about it in my book, the importance of having a good why. But it's just, it really strikes me as how important it is in that room specifically because they are plenty motivated. Motivation is not a problem. Their issue is sometimes just showing up and following through. And oftentimes that's more to do with your why than anything else. So I hope you found this talk valuable. If you liked it, be sure to click subscribe wherever you are consuming this. If you are listening to the audio right now, do me a favor. The next time you are able to, head over to YouTube, youtube.com/Gregg Clunis, and subscribe to the channel there. We are publishing all, if not as many of the episodes as we can in video format going forward. I'm also sharing vlogs, sort of what my daily life looks like, what the behind the scenes looks like, what I'm dealing with, struggling with, wins, losses, so on and so forth. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you think, you know what, that sounds really cool, Gregg, I want to be a part of that, head over to YouTube. At the time of this recording, we are at 901 subscribers. I want to get to 1,000. So any help is greatly appreciated. Head over to YouTube, youtube.com/Gregg Clunis, click subscribe. If you don't want to, just click subscribe on the audio on iTunes, Spotify, Castbox, wherever you get your podcasts. I've been Gregg Clunis. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember that all big changes come from the tiny leaps you take every day.